Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and it's my pleasure today to have as my guest a homegrown Hillsborough woman and current Burlingame resident, the founder and CEO of YogaForce.com, Annie Appleby. Annie Appleby, thanks for joining me today on the show.
Nice to be here, Mark.
So, Annie, I want to get into YogaForce.com, your company, but before we do that, because you are a homegrown girl, Hillsborough and Burlingame, and graduated from Crystal in 1979? Mm-hmm. Let me check my notes here. You went to West, is that right? West Elementary?
I went to West as the best, yes.
West as the best. Then to Crocker Middle School. Uh-huh. I think you had a cup of coffee at Burlingame High, and maybe you can tell us about that a little bit later. Mm-hmm. And then went on to graduate from Crystal, correct?
Exactly.
In 79. So what are some memories you have of Hillsborough, Burlingame Avenue?
Well, I grew up, my father was with Macy's, and he got transferred out here in 1968 or so. And we grew up in Upper Hillsborough on Lakeview. And what I remember is after school, I would go to the Pollywog Pond.
Really? Where was that?
There was a development right on Lakeview Drive. It was a vacant lot, and there was a huge pond with a red truck in it.
Oh, gosh.
And we would get filthy dirty.
Right.
And we would have a Folgers coffee can and pick up pollywogs and bring them home.
Was this back when you were at West or Crocker?
That's when I was at West.
Yeah.
Like second grade, third grade, whatever it was.
Did you ever ride your bike down to Burlingame Avenue?
I rode my bike, but not down to Burlingame Avenue. I rode it all over Hillsborough, Upper Hillsborough.
Did you ever get down to the Avenue, though, or anything to check things out?
Oh,
Did you and
all
your
the
girlfriends
time.
have a favorite place to go to?
My entire life, my office has been El Fornayo. Oh. So it wasn't El Fornayo back then. It was a feed store.
Right, the feed store.
And we had a rabbit, Thumper.
Yeah.
So I would go down to the feed store and get Thumper food.
I'm glad you said it, El Fornayo. That gives people a connection out there that didn't know that it used to be a feed store.
Yeah, it was a cool store.
Yeah.
It's a cool
What
space.
other places do you remember?
Do you want me to get to the high school story now?
No, just give me a couple more places on the Avenue, if you would.
Copenhagen. Mm-hmm. There's tons.
Did you ever go to Nelson's breakfast spot by any chance?
I don't remember going to Nelson.
Okay. Was the Fox Theater still open?
Oh, yeah, the Fox Theater.
Okay.
Yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I saw many movies at the Fox Theater.
Yeah. And were you able to, did you do any shopping at Morning Glory back then? Or where'd you buy your clothes?
Macy's.
Macy's, oh, of course.
I had a credit card.
Yeah, Dad worked there.
And Daddy was vice president.
Yeah, so you're going to buy the clothes at Macy's, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Shop on Union Square.
Yeah. So I mentioned that you did go to Burlingame High School for basically a cup of coffee. Is that correct?
I went to Burlingame High School for approximately 6 months.
Okay.
And my mom and dad were extremely overly protective. Uh-huh. And I wanted to be a cheerleader, and my mom said, "No, you cannot be a cheerleader." I'm like, "Well, Mom, can I be a yell block girl?" And she's like, "What do they wear?" And I said, red turtleneck and white pants. Mm-hmm. She goes, "Long pants?" I'm like, "Yeah, long pants." I'm like, she goes, "Okay, you can be a yell block girl."
Right.
So I was a yell block girl. I went to all the football games because that's my job, right? Yep. And I met football players. So one night after the football game, I was walking on Burlingame Avenue with 3 big, tall football players. And I hear this little Mercedes. I'm like, God, that sounds like my dad's diesel Mercedes. And I look over, and my dad goes, "Ann, get in the car. You're going to Crystal Springs tomorrow."
So that was it.
That was it.
That was your short
life
time. With
short
Burlingame
life with Burlingame High.
Right. I guess when you went to Crystal, though, you must have known a lot of people up there, right?
Yeah.
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 So then you graduated 1979. Uh-huh. What happened?
I went to Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri.
Why?
Because my mom and my grandma went there.
Yeah.
So I went there.
But you went for how long?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
Why did you leave?
Because my sociology professor said I was really good in sociology and that Berkeley had the best program. Cal Berkeley.
Wow.
So he wrote me a recommendation to go to Berkeley, and I did for 2 more years.
Was Stevens an all-female school?
Yes.
It was. Okay,
yes.
So you went back to Berkeley, got your degree in sociology.
And pre-law.
And pre-law.
Yeah.
Okay, and then what happened?
So my dad wanted me to go to law school because he was enrolled at Georgetown, and he was working at the CIA, and he took a vacation to California, and history is made. That's why we're here.
So your dad was working at the CIA. He was like, what, I Spy?
Yeah.
Oh.
And he also was going to law school, and I guess he wanted to go to California and just decided, okay, I'm not going to do that. But he always kind of regretted that he didn't go to law school, so I think he wanted me to go to law school.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I go to law school. I get accepted to Hastings, and I was there for 3 days, and I said, Daddy, I just really don't like the clothes.
And why? Oh, you don't like the clothes?
I don't like the clothes.
Okay.
Because back then you had to wear these ridiculous suits and stuff, and it just wasn't my style.
Right.
So he got mad because it cost a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So then I moved. Well, first of all, I was my first job out of college was I worked at Cal in the Capitol. I got accepted into that. So I worked for Geraldo Rivera on 2020.
Was this in Los Angeles?
No, this was right after I graduated from Berkeley. I went to Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So I got a job there, and it was a really fun summer. I fell in love with an older producer, as one does, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I was living in San Francisco at the time, but afterwards, because I got a job at Pillsbury, Madison, and Sutro in San Francisco. And I didn't know if he liked me enough, so I'm like, okay, I'm just going to get a job working at Pillsbury, Madison, and Sutro. And then he came out all the time, and he's like, okay, I can't get a job in San Francisco. I can get a job in Los Angeles. So I moved from my place on Telegraph Hill to Los Angeles.
Right.
When I was like, that was 22 years. I was 22 something, maybe 23, 4.
So now you're in Los Angeles.
Yeah, now I'm in Los Angeles.
Were you living with this gentleman?
I was living with this gentleman.
Okay, so you're living with a producer.
Yes, I was living with a producer.
Okay.
And then he asked me to marry him, and then I went and threw up in the bathroom, and that wasn't a good sign, I suppose. So I broke up with him.
Okay.
And then I moved out, and I got a place in Beverly Hills across the street from Chasen's.
Okay, wow.
And that was super fun.
Yeah.
And then I was still working at Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher. It was easy for me to get a job at Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher. So I got a job there. And
as paralegal or what?
Yeah, as a paralegal.
Right.
And then I also got accepted to Southwestern University because that's where the O.J. Simpson people went. And I was going to go to law school there, but I'm just like, again, ugh.
Okay.
I just didn't want to be a lawyer, really. So
Right.
I didn't do that. So I gave the old college try for a couple minutes.
Sure.
So I really liked entertainment, and I liked the media. I love that. So while I was at Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, I got a job at ABC in Los Angeles, and I worked on the Smothers Brothers special, and I got to work on the 1988 Academy Awards.
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, and I met everybody. Robin Williams was really nervous, and I'm like, come on, why are you so nervous? You were so good in Good Morning Vietnam. Calm down, take a couple deep breaths. He's going, oh God, thanks. He's sweating bullets. I'm like, you're really funny. You're going to be fine. Yeah. Cher was up there. It was like I got to meet Cher. And she's little.
What was your role?
I was a ABC helper. Not really a seat filler, a step above a seat filler.
Okay.
And so I would help the movie stars get to their seats.
Right.
And, I called somebody Cary Grant, and he got really mad at me because he wasn't Cary Grant.
It wasn't Cary Grant, right.
I don't remember who it was.
Okay.
But those were fun times.
And how long did you stay down in L.A.?
18 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Is that where the whole YogaForce.com thing evolved, or how did that come along?
Oh, after that little gig at ABC, I applied for a job at Paramount Pictures. So I got a job at Paramount Pictures, and I was working for the legal department, and I was a liaison between the legal and the marketing department for home entertainment. And that's back when we had home video cassettes.
Right.
And my responsibility was to make sure Tom Cruise's likeness was bigger than anybody else's on Top Gun, right? And everybody's name had to be spelled correctly, and it was such a high pressure job.
This was on the labels of the
the video cassettes.
The video cassettes, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I lasted for 5 years, and 5 years and 1 week I quit because I couldn't stand my boss.
Really?
Yeah, he locked me in his room. It's like those big, humongous rooms, and he had a little button on his desk, and I would go in there and you'd hear click. Annie, why don't you come sit here and watch Murphy Brown with me? I'm like, because I have a date and it's late. I mean, that's the way they handled it back then. Yeah. You know, it's just awful. So I couldn't wait to get
So
out
this
of there.
puts you in your mid to late 20s now, or what? Or
I think
that?
I'm in my 30s at this point.
All right.
Young, maybe late 20s. I'm not good at that stuff.
Okay.
But so I started going to the lot to take a yoga class. And I'm like a type A personality, and I'm like, this isn't going to go well. I'm not going to be good at yoga. But my friend Dee Dee dragged me to class.
Great.
So the teacher was Marianne Stork, and she was fantastic, really funny, great yoga teacher. And she goes, Annie, you know what? Just give it 3 times. It's like, take yoga 3 times. If you don't like it by the 3rd time, it's probably not for you. But you can't talk in yoga class. You have to pay attention and breathe and get into the zone. I'm like, ugh. So the first 2 classes I hated because I couldn't really do that. 3rd class, I got it. And it was unbelievable. I loved it. And so I got addicted to yoga at Paramount.
Okay. Now we're doing yoga at Paramount.
Yep.
And?
I get in a car accident.
Oh, boy.
So I quit Paramount.
Paramount, right.
My dad would have killed me if I didn't get my 401k. So I had to get fully vested. So I had to stay for 5 years. So the last month was like, all I did was do yoga, right?
Yeah.
And then, so I still had my gym membership, and I lived in Hancock Park, which is close to Paramount. So I would go to yoga all the time. And then I decided that I wanted to start YogaForce. So I went out with a bunch of friends, and we played around with all these names. But the reason initially YogaForce started is because I was in the riots. The Rodney King riots.
Oh, right.
And I thought that cops needed to do yoga because they were out of control back then. The cops were. And I'm like, God, if they just did some yoga, that might help them. And so I went into the West Hollywood police department, and I said, hi, I'm Annie Appleby. I'm going to have a yoga company. I just don't know the name of it. But once I have the yoga company, I am going to come in here and teach yoga. And the guy goes, yeah, honey, just what we need. A bunch of cops sitting around humming. He goes, no. Okay. And he's eating a donut, and he's 20 pounds overweight. So I'm like, okay. So we keep on figuring out names.
Did you choose the police because you wanted to have a calming effect on them, thinking yoga would have a calming effect?
I thought it would help them take 3 deep breaths before they shoot somebody. Okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because maybe during the 3 deep breaths, you're going to change your mind. Or, I just thought that be more, yoga makes you more aware of everything.
And were you going to do this for free, or were you going to charge the police department?
No, I was going to charge the police department.
You were?
Yeah.
Okay.
But first I needed a company. I didn't have a company, so I had to figure out a name, right?
Okay.
So we had our little dinner parties, and we're throwing around names, and I don't like any of the names. And I go to sleep. I get the picture of the logo in my mind. I call my uncle, who was the head of patents and trademarks for Max Factor and Bank of America. And I go, don't tell Daddy, but trademark my name, YogaForce. because that's it. That's the name. And then I went into Paramount, and I had a friend who was a graphic designer for Paramount. So with all the fancy Paramount equipment, I'm like on a cocktail napkin, here, put this on, make this logo for me. And then I got a shirt made, and it said YogaForce, and then I went to the CIA with my shirt on. And I said, hey, you guys need to do yoga. And they go, no, we have no time for yoga. And then that's like, oh, shoot, my whole idea that I was going to do didn't work out the way I wanted it to do. So I have to pivot. So, oh, you know what? These clothes are kind of cute. Let me make clothes. So I started out with big one-size-fits-all sweatshirts, and they had huge logos on them. And then I had little T-shirts, and I wanted to keep my inventory low, so I had shorts and I had leggings, and I only had 2 sizes, big and little.
Right. Okay.
So one size fits all, and then big and little.
Yeah.
And I had them with me, and I went. I wore them. I had the big logo, and I went to a yoga class on Larchmont. And the scout for the Murphy Brown show said, hey, where did you get that yoga sweatshirt? And I'm like, I made it. It's my company.
Right, company.
He goes, oh, well, do you have any little logos? Because I work for CBS, and we're not allowed to show any logos that are bigger than 4 quarters around. I said, sure, I've got that. How many do you need? What colors do you want? And he was like, we want like 12 for the Murphy Brown show, and we'll buy them from you.
So they could only be a certain size logo on a television show? Is that
4 quarters? 4 quarters. And so I didn't have that. So I like run down to, downtown Los Angeles, and I'm like, we got to squeeze that logo down and make little ones. So we made little ones. And then I got on I got on a lot of TV shows.
Did they pay you for that?
Yeah, full retail.
Wow.
Out of their petty cash.
Yeah.
And then they showed it on TV.
No kidding.
So I was on 75 different TV shows and 5 motion pictures.
Your merchandise?
Yes. Not me. My YogaForce merchandise.
Man.
So that's all on YogaForce.com. You can go there. The About section, there's a place that takes you to motion pictures and TV shows. And
so it grew from there?
Yeah, it grew. My first store was Fred Siegel, which was very high end, and it was very trendy, and all the buyers from all the major department stores.
That's in Los Angeles?
Bought from there, yeah.
What's the name of it again?
Fred Siegel.
Okay.
And so I got it into Fred Siegel, and then I got it into Nordstrom's, and I got it into Bloomingdale's, and I got it into Macy's, and I had from October to December 4th. Okay. And Dana Messina was the CEO of Steinway Piano, and he was my factor. He goes, Annie, you know what? If you get any orders, I'll factor you. He didn't think I'd get any orders.
Right.
So after, the Fred Siegel one, I got tons of orders from spas, resorts, Baccara, Marriott, a whole bunch of stores. Like, it was crazy. I got so many orders.
It became sort of trendy apparel?
Yeah. Yoga was just beginning then. It was like 1995 is when I started yoga, the YogaForce clothing line. And it was colorful, active clothes.
Yeah.
So it appealed to people, even though they didn't do yoga. They had a friend who did yoga back then, or they heard of yoga.
Yeah.
And yoga was cool. It was not hippy-dippy. It was like getting really cool.
Yeah.
And beneficial. I thought after working at Paramount, I wanted to do something that was good for humanity. And I thought, hey, try yoga. That was a good sign to have on.
Did you also open up a studio or have yoga lessons going on?
Okay, so so Dana did, like, after I got all those papers, and he said a bad swear word. And then he's like, okay, I'm going to factor you, and you got to get this stuff out by the 4th of, you've got to make sure it's out on the stores on shelves at the 4th of December. So I moved it by myself.
When you say factor, you mean he's going to underwrite
pay for it?
Pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's why he said a bad word that starts with an S.
Okay.
But he did, and I got everything in stores all by myself. It was hard. It was really hard.
Strictly California stores, or
no, all over. I went to New York. I met with Bloomingdale's. That was a great experience for me because I went in a suit and I presented it to the buyer, and she goes, Annie, come back tomorrow, but don't wear that suit. You need to wear YogaForce. And I was so happy, that I got to wear my comfortable, active clothes.
Where did online classes, where did that all involve?
No. So I did not teach. I did yoga. I loved yoga, and I did yoga with Brian Kest, and I think I did it like 4 hours of yoga.
Okay.
And then we'd go out to dinner.
Yeah.
And that was in Santa Monica.
Okay.
So I would do yoga all the time. And I didn't teach.
Right.
Okay. So Dana had sciatica. I don't know what happened. I think he tripped when he was running, and he got sciatica. And he goes, Annie, can you teach me yoga so I can fix the sciatica? And I'm like, yeah, I know how to do that because I got in a car accident. And my hip bone was completely out. My right hip bone was like 3 inches above my left hip bone in the car accident.
Wow.
And so I knew how to fix sciatica. And, but, so I think I missed a step. So when I was at Paramount, I retained my gym membership. So one day while I was on my way to the Paramount class in Hancock Park, I got in a car accident. So my hip bone was off. So when I did downward facing dog, my downward facing dog was completely off. And so I kept on getting called out by Brian in front of 200 people. Appleby, look at your hands. You're all out of whack. What's going on? I'm like, well, I got in a car accident. He goes, well, you can't have you're not going to fix your injuries if you're not in alignment. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? So I got Scotch tape and I put it on the top of the yoga mat. And then I'm like, wait a minute. And this guy would come in and take yoga right in front of me, and he had a boogie board kind of a thing. And he'd always put the boogie board in front of the class. I always noticed the boogie board was a different shape. And then it kind of clicked, hey, why don't I make an ergonomically styled yoga mat? Because there's so many people in this class, and you can't really cheat the space. You're going to look like a jerk if you have a huge yoga mat at that time.
Yeah. So
I'm like, okay, I'm going to make it wider at the shoulders and narrower at the feet, but still bigger than a regular yoga mat. And this happened in 2005 is when I patented.
That's yoga mat.
The yoga mat.
A-line?
Yeah. The yoga A-line mat.
Yeah, the yoga A-line mat.
Yeah. So I patented that in 2005.
And that's done pretty good for you?
Well, my first appointment, it was so funny. It was November, and I found out Kate Betts I had talked to her at Bazaar about YogaForce.
Okay.
And then she got moved to Time Magazine. So I emailed her about my YogaForce mat because it was in a prototype stage, right? And I said, I've got this fantastic mat. You have to see it. If you do any stories on yoga, you have to call me because this mat is brilliant, and you know all about my YogaForce clothing. And I'm putting that on hold for a little while, and I'm doing the mat because one person cannot do an entire company like that. It's like crazy. So she calls me the next day and she goes, hey, Annie, I want to do a story on this yoga mat. I'm like, oh no, because it was just a prototype. It wasn't all made. And so she did the story, and it's on my website, yogaforce.com, media section.
Yeah.
So then I get the prototype perfected, and I get a company in Taiwan to manufacture my mats because they do the best job.
And this is patented by now?
Yes, it's patented.
Okay.
And so I go into my first appointment was with Sharper Image, and that was near the Embarcadero in San Francisco. So my dad and I went into the meeting, but I went into the meeting by myself. My dad waited in the car. And so I presented my yoga mat, and I also had a copy of the Time Magazine thing.
Sure.
With it looking like Madonna was on my yoga mat.
Oh, looking like Madonna was on.
But Madonna does have a yoga mat.
Okay.
Madonna loved my clothes.
Okay.
I had a lot of celebrity clientele.
Really?
Kim Kardashian, was one of the first people that had the YogaForce mat. And Brooke Dunbar, also from Hillsborough, said, Annie, you got to watch your mats on E! Entertainment.
Yeah.
And Kim Kardashian. I'm like, who the hell is Kim Kardashian? This is a
Right.
long time ago before she was famous.
How did they purchase the mats, though? Was it from Sharper Image?
Oh, no, they got them from Kitson. Kitson is another really cool trendy store in LA.
Okay.
So my very first meeting was with the Sharper Image.
Yeah.
So the Sharper Image said, I think you're going to like the order we're going to give you. Right? I didn't have anything mass produced. You can't have anything mass produced until you get an order. Mm-hmm. I got my first order, 17,500 units from the Sharper Image.
Wow. Did they put a time limit on that and say, I want them 3 months or 2 weeks?
They gave me 3 months because they had to get manufactured from Taiwan.
Yeah.
And they paid for all the shipping from Taiwan. And it went in every single door of Sharper Image.
Sharper Image.
Then I got him into Bloomingdale's. And the funny story is I got him into Kitson and all the spas and resorts.
Yeah.
Because you have to order 10,000 mats. You have I think 20,000. But the minimum was maybe 7,000 mats. I kept reordering and reordering and reordering.
Did you have enough cash flow going at that time to pay for these things?
Yes.
Or was your uncle still?
Oh yeah, no. Uncle
underwriting?
Uncle Phil was my.
Yeah.
So Phil Schlein was the first investor of Steve Jobs.
Really?
Yes. See, he was the first investor for Apple Computer.
Okay.
And there's a movie about Steve Jobs, and they have Phil Schlein in the conference room, and he's the one that banged his head against the desk.
Really?
Yeah. And so Phil and my father worked together at Macy's. So when I moved back here because I sold my condo in Los Angeles, and I moved back to Burlingame because my dad was really sick. And I thought I was going to move to Missouri because I thought Gear for Sports was going to license YogaForce, and we worked with them, got a lot of prototypes. Then the guy who was taking that through called me up and said, I can't do this. I'm leaving Gear for Sports to go into real estate. Yeah. I'm like, okay, so that didn't work out. Anyway, I decided to patent the mat when I got to San Francisco. So the mat was patented. I started the YogaForce in 1995, and I started the YogaForce mat in 2005.
Where can one buy the mat today? Is it on Amazon?
It's online.
Or just strictly online?
It's online. It's almost sold out. I am talking to people about licensing and acquiring YogaForce right now. I love collaborations. We are doing a huge... we've got some mats left, but we're doing a huge order now to Canada.
Okay.
To a real high-end place in Canada.
So besides the mat and some of the apparel, what else does YogaForce.com have to offer as far as clothing goes?
Well, I'm not doing that anymore. Just because a one-man show, I don't want to be.
Okay.
It's too much work. I want to be acquired by Nike or Lululemon or something like that.
And that's what you're working on?
Yes, and that's what I'm working on.
And there's no online classes offered on YogaForce.com?
I just teach privately.
Privately to homes around here in Burlingame and Hillsborough, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Okay. What was going on in Hawaii where you met Bill Maher?
Oh, I was doing a project because I'm really good at marketing and PR. So I have a client in Hawaii, and I got offered to go out to Hawaii for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And I met with Bill Maher. He had a show, his last show actually, in Hawaii. And he has a YogaForce mat.
Did you know that he had one?
Yeah, I sent him one.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, I personally sent him a YogaForce mat.
And I looked on your website, and I hope I might not even say this right, but what is Doga, or is it Doga?
It's both. It's Doga and Doga.
And why don't you tell everybody
You say
what that's
tomato,
about?
I say tomato. It's the same thing.
Okay.
Okay, so this is funny. So this is a Hillsborough Burlingame story.
Uh-huh.
So Chrissy Panos was my best friend in second, third grade, whatever grade. And I hadn't seen her since Crocker. And there's a thing called Facebook. So when I moved here in 2005, or when was it 2003? I think I moved here in 2003. And I'm like, let's look on Facebook and let's see if I can find somebody I know. And I found Chrissy. So I called Chrissy and she goes, "Oh, Annie, I'm here too. Let's go out." So we went for a walk on Crystal Springs Reservoir, what did they go? Sawyer Camp Road. Mm-hmm. And I loved that when I was a kid too. I loved running on Sawyer Camp Road. The whole 12. Yeah. Oh, I did the whole 12.
Good for you.
I was a marathon runner. But yeah, Chrissy goes, "Annie, I'm getting a dog, and I have an older dog. I'm getting a puppy, and I'm having a birthday party. You got to come over to the birthday party." And it was 9. It's a weird date. It was Madison's going to be 14 on the 1st of August.
Madison, your dog.
Madison, my dog.
Yeah.
So I go to the party, and the first thing I say is, "Where's the puppy? I want to see the puppy." She got this puppy from Chicago. She loves Pomeranians. And so she brought the puppy out, and I go, "Oh, that's my dog." She goes, "You got a lot of nerve." I'm like, "No, but when I was at Paramount, I went out to lunch with this lady who all she did was match celebrities up with their pets. Or right. You should have a Pomeranian. Yep. You should have a pit bull. You should have a, and I'm like at the lunch, and I'm like, "Well, what should I have?" She goes, "You should definitely have a Pomeranian." So when I saw the Pomeranian, I said, "That's my puppy. That's my dog." So Chrissy was kind of like, "No, this is my dog. I got that dog from Chicago, and it's a great dog." And I'm like, "Okay." So 2 weeks go by. Chrissy calls me up, and she goes, "Annie, can you come pick up your dog?"
Wow. Why?
I'm like, because it's eating her kitchen. She's got these little boards in her kitchen,
right.
and the dog is too hyper for her family. And I'm like, "No, I really kind of can't have a dog." And she goes, "Okay, I'll just call Pomeranian Rescue." And I said, "I'll be there in 5 minutes to pick up my dog."
And this is when your relationship with Madison, the dog, started?
Well, yeah, Madison was a little puppy. She was like 8 weeks old, or very, very small little dog. So I started doing yoga because that's what I did. And then Madison would do up dog and down dog with me. Okay. And I'm like, "Oh God, I got to teach dog yoga. This is fun." So I kind of made it up, but it's like doing child yoga. It's a dog instead of a child.
So
there's baby yoga.
Do you know of any people that are actually doing this today?
Oh, I think there's a lot of people doing dog yoga.
Okay.
But I'm one of the. I always happen to be a pioneer of something crazy.
So you're one of the pioneers of
dog yoga.
Right, dog yoga. That's funny.
I think so too. But I've been on National Geographic, and the American Kennel Association has endorsed me. I mean, it's like it was kind of crazy good.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just ask you this, because that's really good. That's my next question. Can you share any success stories or testimonials from your YogaForce customers who've experienced positive results? I mean,
well, Dana Messina had sciatica. He was my first ever client, and I completely fixed his sciatica.
Right.
And I had sciatica from the car accident, and I completely fixed my sciatica. And I also completely healed my injuries.
Yeah.
The orthopedic surgeon got my mats. He gave them. He was the orthopedic surgeon to Ronald Reagan.
No kidding.
And he bought a whole bunch of yoga mats.
So if we go online, there's different testimonials and things like that on there?
Yeah.
I saw one that has you're on the cover of Yoga Magazine?
Yep.
Yeah.
I worked with Yoga Journal. Yoga Journal was a big,
Journal,
I think it's still around. I worked with them and did all the Yoga Journal conferences. Yeah. The one thing that is funny, I did the first yoga expo, the very first yoga expo in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
And I had these YogaForce keychains made.
Yeah.
And they cost me 50 cents each to make. And my dad was really mad at me. He's like, "What the hell are you doing that for?" And I'm like, "Because, I think I can sell these." He goes, "You're not going to be able to sell these little 1960 crazy little, the squeezing thing for coins." Yep. I'm like, "Daddy, I think I can sell." So I knew they were going to have a yoga expo, and we had just introduced at Paramount. I wasn't there any longer, right? But I was friends with everybody at Paramount. So I called Martin Blythe. He was the head of Paramount publicity for the MTV Power Yoga that Kristen McGee was doing. Okay. I'm like, I got to do something with these people. I go, now I've got YogaForce and we got to do something. And here's these great keychains.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I'll buy all your keychains for $5 each. I go, Daddy, he bought my keychains for $5.
And they cost you how much? 50 cents?
50 cents. Yeah. And it was like at least $5,000. At least $5,000. And then so I lived here and I drove to LA. And I stayed with my friends Jim and Lisa in Los Angeles. And so Kristen McGee and I got along great. She's the Peloton yoga girl.
Okay.
And she's very big on social media, which I don't have time to do all that stuff. But anyway, she's great at social media. She's on Instagram at Kristen McGee. And so we're in the booth and Kristen goes, there's this guy with a camera, this fat guy with a camera. I'm like, Kristen, go find out what show it is. She goes, it's for the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. I go, bring him over here. So there's a clip of us on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno.
Really?
So Martin Blythe calls me up the next day. He goes, Annie, that was really good.
Yeah.
It was really good publicity.
Oh, I would think so. Yes.
Yeah. So we got great publicity from the first ever Yoga Expo.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so going forward, what's the future for Annie Appleby and YogaForce?
Well, Annie Appleby is not going to be an entrepreneur. I'll be an entrepreneur. I'll think of things, but right. I'm going to think of things for a bigger company.
Okay.
Because Annie Appleby is not going to box, ship. Oh my God, it was so hard. I did everything.
You don't want to be the one-man band.
I don't want to be the one-man band, no. But yoga has taken off.
Yeah, indeed it has, yeah.
Yes.
So what do you hope to do? Sell YogaForce?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or get it acquired.
Yeah.
And then I hope to do a lot of interesting collaborations because I've worked with Johnson & Johnson. I have had skin cancer, so I've done a lot of public speaking with the American Academy of Dermatology. Yeah. I'm involved in women's events with UC Berkeley. And the dog thing, like there's even older women, I think, take A-line. Have you heard of that? That's it's a thing you can get at Walgreens.
Okay.
And it helps digestion.
Right.
What are those things called? Some pharmacy. Probiotic. It's a probiotic.
Good.
Okay. Wouldn't it be great to do a tie-in with them?
Yeah.
But I can't get in touch with anybody at that company because it's such a huge company. Procter & Gamble, I believe. But I'm going to try. I think that's an easy one. Or also, I'm working with some, I worked a little bit with Toyota and I worked a little bit with Tesla because your car has to get a line, so you have to get a line. So we did some promotions with the YogaForce mat.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Great.
And Subaru would be really fun because I have a dog, and they all are very into dogs on their.
So you're going to continue to sell yoga mat?
I'm almost out of mats. I mean, after this thing with Canada that I'm doing, I'm going to have very few mats left, but I still have a few, and then I will. It's got a patent and a trademark, and I'm just going to get it acquired.
Yeah. So we spoke a lot about your website. Can you tell our listeners where they can find that website? It's www.yogaforce.com. Is that correct?
YogaForce.com. YogaForce.com.
Great.
Like Air Force.
Like Air Force, but it's YogaForce.
Yeah.
Wow. Annie Appleby, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark.
I'd like to thank Annie Appleby, founder and CEO of YogaForce.com, for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to Joanna Nagler for her yoga consultation and advice, Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video, original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. This podcast was recorded on Thursday, June 8th, 2023. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.